Don't worry, we are friends.
All right, now we're joined by two of the many co-founders of Stride, Aidan and Riley. Do you want to start by giving a brief introduction to yourselves?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Riley, one of the co-founders of Stride Labs. We build the Stride protocol, which is safe and minimal liquid staking for Cosmos.
I'm Aidan, second out of three co-founders of Stride Labs. I work on product engineering, biz dev at Stride Labs, and we do liquid staking.
I see. All right. So, maybe do we want to start out by giving a brief introduction to the overall liquid staking landscape in Cosmos, how it sort of developed since last Cosmoverse, and what the current narratives and trajectories are?
Yeah, a little known fact about liquid staking in Cosmos. I think Felix from Chorus One is the godfather of liquid staking.
Oh yeah, was it the Bell Curve podcast recently?
Yeah.
The Bell Curve episode.
Yeah, I think Aidan was talking about it on there. He wrote the very first blog post introducing fungible delegation vouchers, the first version of liquid staking, and soon after Lido launched on Ethereum, but liquid staking never really came to Cosmos until some more recent technological advancements. And today there are about 3 liquid staking providers, and of note, there's a liquid staking regulation framework called the Liquid Staking Module that we can talk about in a bit. It's pretty exciting and just came to market.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that. I think, so there are 3 main providers, Quicksilver, Persistence, and Stride. They're all slightly different, vary in different ways. 2 things that I think make Stride very special. The first is we're an interchain security chain. So we try really hard to align with Atom, the underlying base layer. Especially with liquid staking, you really want the protocol to be aligned with the base layer because it controls sort of the heart of the protocol, the staking. So ICS for us is really important to be aligned with Atom. And as Riley was talking about with LSM, we also really care about UX. Crypto is so complicated, UX is often fragmented and challenging, and LSM just makes it easy. So you can go directly from your native stake to liquid stake. And we've actually seen a big uptick in TVL recently. I think we grew our TVL by like 30% or so after LSM in just a few weeks, so it's been exciting.
Nice. Could you dive a little deeper into how precisely the LSM works? What advantages it brings over how liquid staking was implemented previously?
Yeah, so I think there are 2 main ways to think about LSM. The first is as a regulatory framework on liquid staking. So there's all these concerns about liquid staking either as a centralizing force or concerns about liquid staking protocols taking over governance, lots of concerns. And one thing that LSM does is it regulates liquid staking providers. So the simplest thing that it does is it caps liquid stake at a percentage of total network stake. So currently that number is I believe 25%, but it could be raised in the future. And there are some other safety safeguards in place. Another one is the validator bond, so it forces validators to have some skin in the game, which helps solve this thing called the principal agent problem. So validators are less likely to attack the network, and it's harder for them to circumvent these safeguards because they have skin in the game. They can get slashed. The second really big thing it does is it's a huge UX improvement. So previously, if you wanted to liquid stake, you would have to unbond your tokens. It takes 3 weeks. Like imagine going to someone in Web2 and being like, yeah, you can use our product, but you have to wait 3 weeks. It's just a non-starter. But now you can do it almost instantly. So those are the two main benefits.
Yeah, I think you covered it quite well. Zaki and the Collision team have been working on this for years. I think they first mentioned it back in 2020, maybe early 2021, but it wasn't merged into the Cosmos Hub until very recently. And we expect, hopefully, once it's a little bit more hardened, that other chains will take a cue, and maybe DYDX will add it, Celestia, Osmosis, and be able to offer liquid staking without having to unbond on all these chains, and in a safe, regulated manner.
Yeah. So I mean, the unbonding, skipping that period has already been a great UX improvement. Maybe getting to talk about the other trade-offs you're facing when liquid staking, for example, not being able to participate in governance, not being able to qualify for any airdrops, and also sometimes not being able to choose the validator you want to delegate to. How are you addressing all of these trade-offs at Stride?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to your point, there's something special in Cosmos where when you stake, you actually get additional exciting features. So you get to participate in governance, you get to pick your validator, you get airdrops. These are amazing features. And we want the trade-off to liquid stake to be essentially zero. So we're working on features in all of these areas. We actually worked with the Neutron team to airdrop NTRN tokens to ST Atom holders. So they snapshotted all of the ST Atom holders at the airdrop block height, and they actually airdropped NTRN to ST Atom holders. So those ST Atom holders got the airdrop. I'll let Riley talk a little bit about the governance side of things. I think he's been thinking about that.
Yeah, governance today with liquid staking is not that important because only if $100 are liquid staked on the Cosmos Hub, only 2 of those are liquid staked. Very low penetration. You look at Ethereum, people are debating whether we should cross the 33% threshold, but we're very far from that today. So the amount of governance power that is taken by Stride is quite low.
But do you expect that to change in the future?
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about it from a very basic economic perspective, I mean, liquid staking should become the default action for pretty much every participant on a chain. Would you agree with that?
It should. No one wants to forfeit their staking yield to transact, to pay gas, to collateralize, to LP, to swap. You should be able to do both. And Zaki famously said in the infamous Atom 2.0 paper that liquid staking penetration should reach 100%. No one should be holding Atom, only ST Atom. So I think we are trending towards that world, but it will take some time. But if we were to reach that world, what does that look like without governance? I don't think it's feasible. So we're working on features to allow ST Atom holders to lock up their ST Atom tokens and cast a vote on the hub. At a very high level, the way that it works is you lock your ST Atom either on Stride or in an osmosis pool or even in DeFi. Maybe you're collateralizing the IST token on Agoric, or maybe you're taking out a loan on Mars, lock up your tokens, cast a vote, and that gets reflected on Cosmos Hub governance through Stride. Should be coming in the next quarter.
Nice. So maybe moving a little bit towards the economic implication of that. We already touched on that. Speaking from a rational actor, everybody should be liquid staking. Looking at the whole DeFi landscape, DeFi protocols finally maturing in Cosmos a little bit so that we have something beyond simple AMMs, beyond simple lending markets. Now having protocols like Levana, DYDX, which we just had on our interviews here before, Quasar, Sommelier. How do you think that liquid staking is going to impact the broader DeFi landscape?
I think it's really a catalyst for any protocol that requires collateral. You look at Levana today, just as an example. They require Atom deposits in order to create a perp market for Atom. But those Atom deposits are sacrificing their yield. I think Levana pays between 22% and 35%, depending on how long you lock your Atom, slightly above what you can earn from staking. But if you were to deposit ST Atom, you would earn 20% from staking plus that yield between 40 and say 55.
No.
So the value prop for a user is far, far more attractive. And Levana is one of the protocols that offers the most yield. You look at some of the less new, maybe more cautious projects like Agoric and Mars, the yields offered are below the staking rate. So they have to supplement with incentives, which hurts tokenomics, and you see how that's played out for some of the Cosmos chains with high inflation and large incentive budgets that end up hurting native stakers, who are the group you really want to prioritize most. So I think it does a lot to align incentives and supercharge all the DeFi platforms that need collateral.
Yeah, one other thing I would add is I think the design space for liquid staking tokens is relatively unexplored still. Liquid staking tokens are only 2 or 3 years old at this point. And one super simple example is, when you go on a centralized exchange, some of the tokens that the centralized exchange holds are just staked. And on most decentralized exchanges, they're not. Osmosis has experimented with superfluid staking. That's one angle you could take it. But there's other ways that you could design a DEX that has some tokens that are staked. So for example, on Ethereum, that might be, on Uniswap on Ethereum, that might be the primary trading venue for DYDX tokens. because the community is mostly Ethereum based. But now you'll have DYDX and STDYDX, and the STDYDX will accrue yield, while DYDX won't. So you might actually see a new market pop up where you have like STDYDX paired with ETH or something like that, and that could be more attractive than just DYDX. There's also like different designs where maybe it's one part STDYDX, one part DYDX. So there's, I think, a rich design space, and hopefully we see lots more protocol designers integrating LSTs into their DeFi protocols.
One more point. It's not just supplementing existing protocols or creating these pool pairs between LSTs and non-LSTs. There are altogether new types of DeFi that are made possible through LSTs. For example, to build off your STDYDX ETH pair, you could pair STDYDX with STAtom, double LST pair, earning staking rewards on both sides, plus LP fees, plus swap fees. Or if you look to Ethereum, Pendle Finance, number of LSD-based stablecoins, there is a whole new slew of innovation. There's a protocol called Amulet and another one called Nolus, both of which allow you to pull forward your yield from staking using LSTs, coming to Cosmos in the next 3 months. So some exciting innovation unlocked by LSTs themselves, but for the most part, it's supercharging what already exists.
So you think it's going to improve the overall composability and like the money Lego aspects of DeFi a lot? That you can just, you can integrate with different protocols. For example, let's say once you liquid stake your Atom on Stride, you might have a pop-up, okay, now you cannot only use your regular Atom as collateral on Levana, but now you can use your staked Atom. So you think that's going to happen one day, and that's pretty much going to raise like crypto's risk-free rate to whatever the respective staking yield is?
We've been talking with many teams at Cosmoverse the last few days about UX flows that might enable these composable flows that combine many app chains and products. For example, one could start with USD, onboard it to USDC, swap to Atom, liquid stake, and then buy a bad kid, all with one click, enabled by packet forwarding middleware. Or you could start with Atom, liquid stake, collateralize on UMI, and loop to leverage stake, all with one click. We're kind of in the early innings of composing these DeFi Legos, but I think it is possible, and you can do composable actions like this on Ethereum very easily, but in Cosmos, it's a little bit more challenging, so we're starting to work out the kinks.
So what would you need to do in order to enable these, one-click transactions that span across different chains?
Yeah, I think Aidan's been working on a few, particularly with the case of Evmos. If you want to talk about that.
So one more thing I'll add before moving on to this point. I think one reason you might think that we could be at the beginning of like a Cosmos DeFi summer is for the longest time, the base tokens that people had to play around with in DeFi were not inflationary. So Osmosis was obviously the main DeFi app for a long time, and they had this huge incentive budget, and that was like sustaining DeFi activity, but no one else could really make it work. And now you see new, sort of like old products popping up in new places. So there's Forge on Evmos, for example. It's like concentrated liquidity, which exists on Ethereum, but the base token is ST-Evmos, and that's only enabled by liquid staking. So you have, on the one hand, liquid staking tokens, and then on the other hand, you have new technology that's allowing different chains within Cosmos to compose. So in the Evmos case, for example, one thing that I think people really are confused by in Cosmos is moving tokens between chains. So on Stride, when you liquid stake, you have to take your Evmos, you move it to Stride, you liquid stake it, and then you send it back. It takes like 3 or 4 transactions. So one thing we're doing on Evmos is we have middleware on both Evmos and Stride. And with a single transaction signed with the MetaMask wallet on Evmos, you'll be able to liquid stake your Evmos. And the way that it works under the hood is you IBC transfer the Evmos from Evmos chain to Stride. It's liquid staked on the Stride side, and then it's automatically forwarded back. So there's logic built into the chain that forwards it back. And then you get your ST Evmos on Evmos. So it almost feels like using an app built on the Evmos chain. And it's all enabled through coordination at the IBC layer. So you're like forwarding these packets around. And this is like how the internet works, right? Like if you request a site, you don't have to like push buttons, like move your packets between servers or anything like that. It's just all beautifully abstracted on the back end. And I think that's the direction that IBC is moving. Skip is also doing a lot of great work here. Like, I don't know if you've tried out ibc.fun. By far the easiest way to get a token from one chain to another. They'll just route it. So I think that's the direction that it's going.
Very nice. Maybe looking at the broad implications that liquid staking is going to have on, both the security, governance, and economic aspects. I mean, you're playing around with quite a powerful weapon there. Where do you think you could fuck up? Where do you think you might go wrong?
Yeah, I hope liquid staking is not a weapon. So the the first thing that I would say is I think at Modular Summit there was this great talk by this guy John Charbonneau, and he was talking about how with typical delegated proof of stake, people just like there's only one or two dimensions that validators can differentiate on. It's like yield and brand. And so for most people, they look at the val set, they look at the top 10 validators, they sort them by yield and then by brand, and they pick a validator. Oh. Maybe there's like some really special stakers that care a lot about decentralization and they go to the bottom of the set, but empirically you can see most stake is concentrated in 5, 6, 7 validators at the top of the set. Liquid staking has the power to distribute stake across the entire set. So it can be a decentralizing force, which I think is a bit of a narrative shift. Most people, they hear about liquid staking and it's like a weapon or something that could explode or something dangerous. But I think it can also be a force for decentralization. And then when you get to like these extreme edge cases and how to regulate it, I think that's where LSM becomes important. So LSM creates kind of this sandbox, this regulatory framework where liquid staking can safely develop within that without getting too big or blowing up. I mean, the simple 25% limit means that even if all liquid staking providers got all their stake together and tried to halt the network, they couldn't do it because you need 1/3 stake to halt the network. So that's how I think about it.
Are there still certain aspects where the network and its community sort of depend on the benevolence of a respective liquid staking project? Even though it might be able to foster decentralization theoretically, are there any edge cases where you have to proactively decide, okay, that's how we want to do it because that's for the benefit of the network. It might not be in the best short-term interest of ourselves.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. And when it comes to liquid staking providers, I think they're lucky in that decentralization makes the product stronger, not weaker. With most chains or most crypto products, decentralization is like it's like a chain. It's weighing you down. It makes your product development slower. It makes it harder. And it is a value prop, but there are lots of downsides. With liquid staking, decentralization is one of the core value props. Like we talk to these networks, and for example, Osmosis really wants safe liquid staking, and they want it to be a decentralizing force. So I think Stride's short, medium, and long-term interests are aligned in making good decisions on how to delegate to validators and make networks more decentralized. Because if Stride doesn't do that, less people will liquid stake and there will be more conflict. So I think it's one of the rare cases where decentralization is a core value prop and we're very aligned with the underlying network.
I think that was very well said. I'll just add one comment, which is both decentralization and alignment with the chain for which you're providing liquid staking are highly important. And that's one of the core reasons that Stride joined ICS. Part of it was economic security, as TVL was approaching the cost of buying enough Stride to take over the network. Now that's no longer a concern. Another is, if you look at Lido on ETH, they're trying to implement veto power, where STETH holders could override LDO token holder votes if they so wanted to do. With ICS, we basically have that built in. If the hub validators disagree with a decision that Stride token holders are making, they can fork the chain, do an upgrade to roll it back, or prevent that decision from happening. So they ultimately have power.
Nice. Pivoting a little bit over to you guys at Stride Labs, or Stride as a protocol, like, what's your guys' revenue model? Is there any fee you're extracting or planning to extract? How are you going to, finance and sustain yourselves?
Yeah. So Stride token holders made a decision, when was it, November, December? End of last year, to pass all staking rewards from the various host zones, from Atom, Osmo, Injective, onto Stride stakers. So Stride Labs is a contributor alongside Notional Labs as a contributor, and Informal Systems, and a number of other contributors don't make any revenue from the protocol unless they stake Stride tokens. And of course, Stride Labs and contributors do have allocations for sustainability of their contributions, and they may choose to stake them in the future. There might also be other revenue models because Stride is currently offering liquid staking for 8 or 9 chains. The main one by far is Atom. I think 90+% of the TVL is in Atom. But
is that also proportional to the overall TVL staked for each of these chains? Or did you notice that you even, respective to these relative distributions, you disproportionately caught a big market share on Atom?
I think the biggest market share today is Evmos, followed by Juno and Osmosis, and Atom might be fourth. Now, those other networks, we have very tight integrations. Atom is, I would say, more decentralized than any of these networks, so it's a slow process, but I think we're getting there with ICS and adding the liquid staking module, done a lot of work on hub engineering. So I think we'll get there with the hub. But there are a number of revenue models that might exist for Stride Labs in the future. Today, everything goes to token holders and stakers.
Very nice. I think we've touched on a broad variety of topics. Is there anything else that's maybe upcoming, maybe some Alpha League or anything else you'd like to share to our audience?
Anything in mind?
Come watch our talk tomorrow on Wednesday. I think it'll be an exciting one.
Yeah, big Alpha League tomorrow.
There might be an Alpha League there. I hope we'll get the interview up by then. Otherwise, I think people will be able to rewatch it on YouTube or the live stream. Thank you very much for joining. Maybe to round it up, where can people find you? Where can people follow you? Where can people use your application and learn more about Stride?
Yeah, Stride posts everything on Twitter. It's the main platform. So Twitter/Stride_zone. And you can find the application, the front end at app.stride.zone. You can also liquid stake on various wallets. I think Leap, XDeFi, a few others have liquid staking, Kepler. Follow us on Twitter, and we post almost every day, so we have updates about everything, especially what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah. Stride_zone, Aidan0x on Twitter, and I think...
The personal Twitter plug.
Of course.
Interchain Riley. Find us and our bad kids on Twitter.
Nice. Thank you very much for joining, guys. It was a pleasure. I think we've covered a lot of topics, very, useful for learning more about liquid staking and the future of the whole ecosystem and the implications on, economic security and governance. And hopefully we'll make it to your talk tomorrow, and we're all looking forward to your Alpha League there.
All right, come here. Thank you. Thanks for having us.